Dear Daisy, I read your letter to President Cyril Ramaphosa. I was particularly fascinated that you asked, can girls become presidents too? And the president is right, girls can become presidents. But we have to admit that it's rare and it's tough. In a few minutes, we'll play you an exclusive interview with the Mauritius former president, Dr. Ameenah Gurib-Fakim, and probably you'll get a few tips. Then I'll be joined by two young women, professionals actually, one who was appointed by President Cyril Ramaphosa to help South Africa navigate the land debate. Towards the end of the show, we'll play you a montage of women who have played a significant role in people's lives, much like your mother, by getting your letter to the president. And here we are now, dedicating an entire show to you, Daisy. I hope you'll enjoy the program. And here's that exclusive interview with the former president of Mauritius, Dr. Ameenah Gurib-Fakim, who insists that she was removed from the highest office in the land in Mauritius. Dr. Ameenah, thank you so much for having this chat with us. And I was saying to a colleague earlier on, I was watching an interview that you did on TED Talk where you spoke about you can't have 52% of the team not part of changing the landscape of any country. Just expand a bit on that. And this is on the role of women.
I'll complete that for you. You can't have 52% of the team on the bench and still expect to win a match. So we have for too long marginalized the role of women. And yet, if we look at what the United Nations has put forward in terms of achievement by 2030, if we are going to leave no one behind, if we are going to be successful in delivering on the Sustainable Development Goals, we will have to work with this 52%. Because we have female ingenuity, female intuition, female talent, female way of doing things, which need to be taken on board, because when women are at the table, the decision, be it for the family or for the institution or for the corporate body or for government, is largely different. So we need to empower, we need to mainstream and bring women to the table.
Who is we?
Us, women. Yes.
And the role of men in that?
Well, men, they're there. I mean, when I talk about gender equality, I talk about men and women. But because we started off with this 52%, that's why I'm making the point that we need to bring women on board. And
let's quickly speak about the elections, because that's another thing, right? You have a population of where you have 52% of women. So this means that you have a lot of women who may be participating in deciding who the next government is. Yet most of the time it would seem, though, even women themselves seem to choose men to take up that role.
Well, this is again where we really need to take a look at our laws. Because men, to begin with, will never make way for women to be candidates. But as we want to have at least 30%, because we're talking about quota here, we're not talking about parity. Parity would be 50-50. So if we want to have a quota of women to be on board, we need to relook at the laws. Until the law is not changed, we will still be ending up with a scenario where we'll be ending up with less than 30% of women participating.
Do you think legislation would work?
Absolutely.
Even with companies as well? Because that's another thing. If you look at South Africa, for instance, the top 40 companies on the JSE, you only have one female CEO.
Well, if you were in a country like Norway, for example, that country would shut you down because they insist on that representation of women on their boards. And so if you look again in terms of achievements of these Nordic countries, you'll find that they have very pro-family, very pro-women policies. And I think the results speak for themselves.
And the wage as well, because this is another issue, right? You get women doing exactly the same job that's done by men, but the gender gap is wide. And I remember speaking to President Cyril Ramaphosa about this issue, and this is, I think, just after France had legislated and said that companies who are found not to be paying women the exact amount that they pay the male for doing the same job must face sanctions. Do you think that this should be rolled out? Every country should have something like that?
I think it's natural justice. But if we're doing the same job, they should be paid equally. I can understand maybe if it is, for example, very hard manual labor, where you find that sometimes, I again say sometime, men do more because of sheer physical, superiority from that point of view. But still, I think there has to be a scenario where women should be getting the same pay as for what they do. And there is no excuse whatsoever in the corporate world for women to get less.
But why isn't there that push? You're not rearing a lot of noise around this. It's only when you have events like these, for instance, where we celebrate women, you have International Women's Day, or whether we have where we have a week here in South Africa where we say no to violence against women, that we start having these discussions. These discussions are not happening on a normal basis, as it should, I think.
Well, every day should be the 8th of March day, every day, to really bring to the table. Having said this, there has been progress. We mustn't forget that even for example, women getting the vote, it has been a hard-won battle, but countries have made progress. In my country, women have made massive headway because they've been able to get free education. So education will be the order of the day up until the woman gets the same quality education as the boys, because in some countries it's still not the case. So women, I would say that in many countries they are getting more and more aware of their rights and also of their responsibilities, but this is a conversation that needs to happen at all companies and also at the level of the states. If these companies are defaulting, I think appropriate actions must be taken for redress.
Speaking about your country was at least very brave indeed, getting you to be the country's first female president. Let's take a few steps back. Why did you decide then to resign?
Yes, I will explain the story. When I came to the presidency, I wanted to focus on advocacy for science. And because to me, as I said, in September 2015, when I just came into office, the UN had already put up the Sustainable Development Goals, and where science for the first time has been recognized as being the vehicle through which we will deliver on these SDGs. But when I came to office, I realized that A, there's no budget for this kind of initiative. And secondly, I got approached by the Gates Foundation, I got approached by the Planet Earth Institute to do the advocacy work. But as there was no budget, a grant was provided for this initiative, because I keep saying all the time that somebody has to pay, and I didn't want the taxpayers, the Mauritian taxpayers, to pay, because this was beyond my remit for what I was doing. I was going beyond the remit of presidency, because we have a set of duties as enshrined in the Constitution. But I want to do this because I think this is the narrative that donors, this is the narrative that many policymakers want to hear, the narrative of science coming from the president, especially a sitting president, and also a woman president for that matter. And then I was given a credit card for precisely this advocacy. And then, lo and behold, what happened was that in the course of my travel, I had used the credit card, which I have refunded anyway, 1 year before. 1 year later, all my expenses were splashed out in the public. Now, the thing is that what people have to ask the question, first of all, how come my private details were out in the public? Who leaked the information? In the aim of doing what? And by that time, I felt that in the superior interest of the country, I could not function in that space, and this is when I left office.
The Prime Minister argued at the time that you had violated the Constitution. You seemingly argue that you've done nothing wrong, but then why resign?
Because it had come to a point of no return, and where there was no communication between the Prime Minister and myself, and I could not afford to have a situation where the country would not be functioning properly. So in the interest of institution, in the interest of the country, this was when I took the decision to move out from the office.
You wouldn't say that it was in the interest of showing accountability?
But there was nothing to show to account for. The expenses had been refunded 1 year ago. I had done nothing wrong, because if I had taken any kind of benefits, I would have been blamed, but I had taken no benefits at all, so there was nothing. And why splash out my details in the bank 1 year after I had left the institution, 1 year after I had refunded everything? So this calls for questioning. And no, I had nothing to account for, because I had done nothing wrong, and I mean I'd done nothing wrong. I was doing my job, and I was doing things which is important, because science matters for the continent, especially the African continent, where we need to empower our youth with science, and I was bringing that narrative on board.
Do you think that you face the attacks because you are a woman?
There are many issues which are related to this. I think having a woman on board creates some confusion and some also questioning because, well, already, as I said, I was already a woman. The other thing is that I was doing things maybe much more at the international level, which may not have pleased some people. And so this was why perhaps the recipe was there for my removal. And I insist on the word removal.
You feel that you've been pushed?
Yes.
What do you say to a young woman who's watching you right now, and you speak about how difficult that period may have been leading up to you being, quote, removed?
You just have to believe in what you do. You just have to keep on working hard. You just have to just be there. And just be there and be yourself and never give up. And I feel that whatever I was doing in office, I'm still doing in post-presidency, and I'm still advocating for science. I'm still carrying the message of hope that it is possible and you can do it.
Just a final one. Of course, the role that you played on the future of work, and South Africa, of course, has this huge unemployment rate sitting at around 27.1%. And there's this fear from the unions as well, that once you bring in this fourth industrial revolution, that people may lose their jobs. What's your response to this? What should unions be doing? What should companies be doing? And what should the government be doing?
People will lose their jobs with automation, but there'll be new jobs that will be created. But having said this, what is the state of preparedness of our youth? What is the state of preparedness of our education system? Are we empowering these young children? Because as I've just been reading, 65% of the kids who are small, who are young or about to be born, would be working in areas that don't yet exist. So how are we prepared? And this is the narrative, this is the conversation we need to be having at policy level, that the kids have to be taught differently. They have to learn, and young people have to unlearn, they have to relearn. So lifelong learning, providing them with the appropriate skills to be able to confront these new situations that's going to happen will be very important.
So it means a change of curriculum as well, I guess.
It's adaptation, because you know what I was taught as a kid is no longer relevant to my child or to my grandchild in the years to come. So we need to have a relevant curriculum. We need to have an education system which responds to the need of the economy. And more importantly, on the African continent, this is something where we are weak. We need to invest in our people. It will not happen with donors. It will not happen with handouts from anyone. We need to put our hand in our own pockets. And we need to invest in our own people. We need to provide them with social security net. We need to provide them with all the necessary means at disposal so that our people come up trumps and they come up well prepared for the future. And again, if you look at what we have right now, we are 15% of the world population. We already carry 25% of the disease burden, and we produce, I think, less than 0.1% of the patents of the world. So where is the knowledge being created? It's being created elsewhere. So as Africans, we need to keep on being producers of knowledge and not being pacifists. We need to be activists in terms of knowledge generation, in terms of wealth creation. And this wealth creation has to be created from our own resources. And the resources are there. Africa is a very rich continent, not only in minerals, in water, in space, in land. 60% of arable land on the world is here in Africa. But how do we make the people go back to the land to become agripreneurs, for example? So this is the task ahead of us. This is the conversation that the union have to be asking to the policymakers. What is the state of preparedness for our youth to forge ahead a future in this very, very uncertain world we are living in?
And women shouldn't be left behind.
And absolutely, women should not be left behind, and women should very much be part of this conversation, of this journey together.
Dr. Ameenah, thank you so much for
your time.
Thank
you so much. Thank you.
Daisy, I hope you enjoyed that interview with the former president of Mauritius. And after the break, we continue with another conversation with more women and how to navigate the workplace as a woman. Join us after the break.